Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I've run the Songwriters on Process website, where you can find more than 200 conversations with songwriters about the creative process. I'm not here to talk about tour stories, band drama, how a band got its name, or favorite foods. My goal is to treat songwriters as writers, plain and simple. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers. And today's interview is with Matt Nathanson and Julien Baker. So you might be wondering how I got these two together to talk. And as I've mentioned before, when I interview two songwriters, my highly scientific way of doing this to see if they are a match is to follow each of them on Twitter, see if they follow each other, and then see if they want to talk. And it turns out that not only do they follow each other on Twitter, they are both big fans of each other's music. So that was easy, and they were both very excited to do this this interview together. And the other thing is in the perfect setting when I interview two songwriters, I will ask a couple of questions and let them have at it and talk. That sometimes happens, not all the time. Other times I have to ask more questions, but this was, and those are all great. But this was the ideal interview, the perfect setting. I think I said maybe as you will hear today, I think I said about 10 words and let them have at it. They talked to each other the whole time as if I wasn't even there, and I loved it. I sat back and just listened to them. And they asked each other questions and talked to each other. That was great. I think at one point they acknowledged the fact that they were ignoring me, and I said, please ignore me. I want to listen to you two talk. And this wasn't really, as you'll hear, this wasn't really a deep dive into the nitty gritty of the songwriting process that I like to talk about. They didn't talk about time of day they like to write and lyrics or music first and pens and pencils and rituals and things like that. This was really more about the anxiety of the creative process. I mean, Matt said during the interview, I run from inspiration. The uncertainty of it terrifies me. I don't understand it and can't control it, and that scares me. And then Julien later on said, I don't make music because I might be good at it. I make music because it's a vital form of self-expression. The sense here is that they need to create. They like to create, but they need to. And it struck me really in the metaphors they used to describe lyric writing. They used words like shitting and puking. These were images of violent expulsion that can bring let's be honest, those things bring a tremendous sense of relief to us when we do those things. And they're also intertwined with instinct and drive. So not to get too deep into the Freudian element of it, but when and again, I think it goes to the anxiety of the process and the fear attached to the creative process. And when when Matt said that the inspiration terrifies him, that's really what I thought about. He said, it's a scary place to let yourself go and get swept up in the experience because my brain wants to assert itself. And so that's what this is about. But anyway, I loved this. Julien also talked about running and how she gets ideas about the songwriting process on her runs. But again, this was not about these specifics. That I think was an anomaly in this conversation. So I'm going to stop talking because you want to listen to them every second of this interview on Songwriters on Process with Julien Baker and Matt Nathanson. Anyway, so Julien, we'll start with you. And I'm always interested in the rituals. I read all those old Paris Review interviews with writers about the writing process, and I'm interested in the rituals of the songwriters. So let's start with that. Is there a favorite place where you like to get your writing done? Time of day, room, even down to the nitty gritty, like favorite chair or something like that you just tend to be the most effective as a writer?
For me, the practice of songwriting is a lot about material gathering and organization. Like, I feel it has never been effective for me to sit down and try to mine my brain or like force a song to come squeezed out. So inevitably it ends up like I am sitting in whatever room, like probably this room, like over quarantine, but I do a lot of writing while I run, which is like I guess not focused writing, but like, I don't know. I used to listen to music. Like I had to listen to music when I run, and I still listen to music, but there always like comes a time in the run where I've been out there for like 3 or 4 miles, and I just take my headphones out and I take the time to like sit on thoughts or whatever like comes up in my brain, and I try to record them all down or like crouch somewhere and make a little voice memo of a melody
during the run.
Seriously. Yeah. I mean, not sometimes I'm a little bit too embarrassed to, or I'll like, it's what's been really helpful to me is I've been trying to like brush up on my competence with music theory. That way, if I hear a melody, like if I hear a chord progression in my head, I don't have to like have a guitar with me, or I don't have to like necessarily sing it out unless it's really specific and I don't want to forget it. I can think to myself like, oh, I want to put a raised 7, or I want to put like a major 3 instead of a minor 3. That because I'll like sing the scale degrees and I'll be like, what is that chord I'm hearing that I want? And a lot of the time it starts like with one of those two. I mean, like, you know, people always ask like, do you write lyrics or melodies first? And honestly, it changes. Yeah. But it's like a lot of it is like just being open to where your mind naturally goes and documenting it, like cataloging, and then doing like when I'm back at my house and I've showered and I'm clean and everything, I'll like take a sieve to all of the ideas and try to strain out what's salient, you know?
Yeah. I call it the puking and then the refining. Like, you know, you throw up and then you just throw up everything inside of you. And then you take a break and brush your teeth and then come back and like search through the puke. And you're like, oh my God, look, I guess I swallowed a license plate, you know, whatever.
Yeah, totally.
That's totally how it works. Yeah. And I love that you run. I mean, I only when chased have I run in my life. I think that's great. Yeah, I have similar. But for me, it's gardening. Like during the pandemic, for sure. I'm pretty uncoordinated. So when I bike, like on tour, if I'm going for a bike ride, that used to clear my mind, and now I've crashed my bike so many times into things like I'm not good at it. And so when I go on walks around my neighborhood. My neighborhood has a bunch of stairs and stuff. And but I listen to music almost exclusively on there. And then even listening to like lyrics, you see them in a different way when your like active brain kind of shuts down and you're just kind of doing something. Happens when I'm driving or whatever. All of a sudden lyrics will hit me differently, and oh wow, yeah, wait, I heard this lyric but I hear it this way, and then I'll take out I'll sort of pull off, you know, whatever I'm doing. When I'm gardening, I'll be listening to like a podcast or something, and then something will hit me, and then I'll like take my dirty hands and like make a note, you know, and it's rad. And to answer your question, Ben, I wish that I'm compulsive, like in almost every other aspect of my life. But when it comes to things like creativity, I really wish that I had a ritual, but I feel like they have I have an office, I have a studio down the street. And I feel like all of them run out of road at a certain point where I'll be like I journal every morning almost, but I'll like be in the room. And sometimes this room will be just dead on arrival. Like there's nothing, the guitar doesn't work. The room doesn't work. The chair is uncomfortable, you know? And so like Julien said, it's like getting out of your brain and being able to just kind of like, just kind of doing things that I wish I cooked, that kind of stuff. Anything that's sort of like, but gardening really is the way lately.
Yeah. No.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, no, really quickly. So I was going to say, I hear a lot about this, the role of movement. And I was going to ask you about that anyway, the role of movement in the process. So I wrote an article in the Washington Post about 5 years ago. I'm a big runner. And there's a very, very, very clear link.
I'm outgunned here.
I know. Well, listen, let me tell you this. There is a very clear link between aerobic exercise and creativity. They put people in, it's been done in labs. This is not like snake oil science. It's literally, they put people on a treadmill for 20 minutes at about 60% max heart rate, which is like a moderate walk, and then give them a battery of tests afterwards. And those people always score higher than people who didn't exercise because of a chemical in your brain called brain-derived neurotrophic factor that only gets released through increased blood flow. So there's a very clear link, Julien and Matt, to exercise and immediate about 90 minutes post-exercise. After about 90 minutes, it trails off. But the good news is that 40 minutes isn't twice as good as 20 minutes. And you don't have to go like at 90% max heart rate. So that's been proven. So Julien, when you're on those runs, there's a reason for that as to when those ideas come.
I don't want to, Julien, you had something you were saying. I don't want to hear, but I had a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go for it.
No, go. I wanted to hear what you were
You're about to
say.
write it down? That's so sweet.
Yeah, I want to make sure I don't forget.
I was just going to say a funny thing, which is that my mom, used to tell me it's it increases blood flow to your brain. Yep. She would take me on walks when I was little. She would be like, we need to go outside and do stuff. And you need to you can think better.
That's what it is.
You literally often when I was an adolescent, I know you said it was strictly about songwriting, but I've weirdly been thinking about the habits that my parents ingrained in me that were creative maybe in a covert way, not intentionally covert, but it's just I think of that Alice Walker essay, Our Mother's Gardens, where it's something like that, like gardening or cooking, it becomes an insight into creativity. But when we would have a pissy argument when I was 12, my mom would be like, let's go on a walk and talk about it because you can think more clearly. And also I find that I need to, I used to run in cities a lot, but I can be freer with my thoughts and take them more seriously when I run in nature. And that sounds so hippy dippy lame, but I feel like it is definitely so hard for me to write or to even enjoy music and give lyrics. I've been thinking a lot about the idea of close reading and close listening and really diving into every aspect of a song. And that's so much easier for me to do when I am forced to be present in my body and I'm giving all of my focused attention to music or to my thoughts. It's not compulsive rumination. It's actual constructive thinking is happening. But yeah, what were you going to say, Matt?
No, but actually really quick, let me address that.
Matt.
No,
I got it. I got notes. You don't have to worry. I'm fucking ready.
I promise. But let me say this, Julien, I have an answer to that. And that is that what they found was that when you're in an urban environment, your brain is focused on trying not to get run over by cars. So when you're in a forested environment, as long as you're not being chased by bears, there's a reason for that. Sure. Your body can focus. So actually it does take away. And so when they remove that, there's a reason for that. That all has to do. That's all been proven. So
there's this thing that Ben, that you're saying about creativity that I always get, when you go for a run, it's not every time that you run that this experience happens, right? But when you analyze things and you say the brain does, that stuff never works for me. I never fall into the patterns that people say, well, if you do this thing, it'll trigger, this experience most times or in this way. And for some reason, none of that ever really works for me. So the creative process is always a surprise. Even as I get older, and I'll tell you the thing that I'm really learning is that I run from inspiration. That's actually where I run apparently. But when inspiration shows up, it's so terrifying to me. The uncertainty of the experience of what, I don't understand this. I don't control this. What is happening? What's going on? It can happen in a creative environment where you're making music. It can happen in an environment where I'm sitting down to write. And my need to control is so strong that when things show up that feel magical or otherworldly, it happens in sex. It happens in, it happens in kind of all the scary places where you can kind of let go of, yourself and then get kind of swept up in the experience, my brain really wants to assert itself. And that's like kind of the death of the experience. And Julien, from things I've watched with the way that you throw paint a lot, like sonic paint, and you do it on your records in this really incredible way, and you produce the records. And so I was really interested how you're brave enough to be able to sort of like submerge yourself in the paint throwing experience. And because the songs, even your songs, show up for me as like these beautiful, like wet, like, and there you are, like emerging from it, and you're a part of it, and you're kind of riding it, but it's kind of riding with you. And it's like, it's really rad. And so I wondered, you don't seem to, I mean, you've collaborated before with like, you know, on the Boy Genius stuff or whatever, but like when you do things, it seems like you're kind of this like self-contained, you know, human who can, like, you've got pedals and you do this thing and you kind of vamp on this trip. Yeah. And like, when did you become brave creatively in that way?
What a question. I have a sidebar question that I'll save for later about, you just used so many like very specific visual descriptors for music, and I also think about or feel music in a very visual way, but I'll ask you about that later. When did I become brave musically? I don't think of myself necessarily as brave. I think the way that because I'm also very, like, literally obsessive compulsive, and I feel like the way my control shows up is in, I like to be alone when I write. Like, even when it's very hard for me to make art or like experiment or share a stream of consciousness idea or really follow an inspiration without inhibitions when it's with another person. That's why, like, even, you know, when I write with Phoebe and Lucy, we show each other songs and then we all kind of like go be alone and unwatched and unobserved, because there is something very secret and sacred about it, that when it's almost like being a kid and, you know, making a drawing and being like, I'm not done yet, you can't see it,
right?
And I also, like, I'm trying to open myself up more to collaboration, because I think it became such a, sorry, you can hear my dog itching, but it became such a solitary exercise, really, when I was separated from my band in college. And then that the kind of music I was making was solitary in execution and in the sound of it, because that's the form that was dictated by my environment. And then that is the kind of music that I was recognized for. And so it's been a really long time since I've, outside of the experience of being in Boy Genius, but since I like really collaborated with a band. And, you know, it's like part of that is my control and part of that is my shyness. Like, it seems ironic for a person who is a performer by trade to be shy, but I really am, I think, especially about my music. And what you're describing about running from inspiration because you're afraid of it, because you don't control it, that's maybe why I don't like to share with people. Like, when I'm in that mode, I always want to be alone. I want to go, I don't want to like talk to my partner or my roommates, or anybody, you know, my tour mates. I want to be alone so that I can, I don't know, sort of commune with and explore the idea that has occurred to me in safety, and then like come back up from spelunking in my own brain and tell everybody what I found once I know what's in there, you know?
Yeah, there's a confidence in that. There's a confidence in being able to recognize and follow your own path in that way, that like is definitely, as an introverted extrovert, right? Like, so I need humans in a real way a lot. And then at the same time, then I need moments by myself. But creatively, I feel like I don't trust that what I'm coming up with, even in that spelunking period, I don't trust that it actually matters. And because I'm such a super fan of music, right? I like to blame it on that. I don't like to blame it on the fact that I was parented poorly or whatever, but like, you know, but I love music so much that the creative part of it has been so overwhelmingly difficult because I'm dipping I have so much, whatever it is, when I play something, I'm like, well, that's not what so-and-so did, or that's not what this person did. And so that stuff starts to become a block creatively. Oh, and man. So I envy I really covet that, like when people are like, oh, well, I had this idea and I kind of just followed it. And then it's like, to be able to have that kind of confidence in the idea from its, or have faith in the process enough to just roll with it. Like, I think that's something as I get older, I'm finally coming around to, but I always trip on how folks can have it. I mean, that's what everybody has, that creative thing. I feel like I got into music because I loved music, but I also loved attention. And so I was sort of doing this thing to be like, you love me, you got to love me. Can you love me? You. And so that is sort of the antithesis of the creative individual, because there's this need to please. And that's what you're saying about, like, it's great when you're like, oh, well, you know, the fact that you can have a seed show up and you can feel confident enough in that seed that you sort of nurture it. And you're like for you, how many of your ideas what is your rate of like dying on the vine and like becoming fruit for like creativity? Like, how much it all is important, obviously, but like,
sure,
you know,
yeah, it's like 80-20, dude. Like 80% is chaff. But the thing about it is, and I was thinking this as you were speaking about the kind of the intersection of a need for attention and a need to express yourself musically and a feeling scrutiny for what you produce. Do you think it is hard for you? Do you think it is like, I don't know. I had to get over that exact feeling you're describing. I feel like being recognized for music made it harder for me to take myself seriously. And I guess that's a really like obvious thing to happen or really expected, but it was really crippling for a while. And honestly, it's like I had to reevaluate the purpose behind music. This all sounds so like played out, but I swear to God, it's true. Like, you know, people are like, why do you do music? Do you do it for the love of music, or do you do it for whatever, like to please people? Of course you want to please people. Of course you want your music to connect with people. That it's because being a musician is just another convoluted way of communicating. Like, music in its most essential form is communication. And like, people want to do it whether they're getting patted on the back for it or not. You know, it's like, I think about, this is also so corny, but like my mom and dad love music so much. They love music. They constantly played music. I mean, my mom would straight up sit me down and play me an Elton John song and cry and be like, this song, you don't understand. When this song came out, I was in the 9th grade and it meant everything to me. And I had Elton John posters on my wall in the 70s and I would wear this out. And she doesn't play music, but it's like she sings even though she's not like trained at singing. And so did my grandparents, you know, just like when we would go to family reunions and stuff. This is, oh God, this is so country, but like people literally just like sit around a piano and play like old standards because it's fun to sing with your family. And because music is a form of storytelling and communicating that can be like preserved in an art form. And I don't know, I just had to kind of like, you said something that stuck out to me so bad. You have a hard time thinking what you're saying matters. And I think something flipped after years of therapy and a lot of ruminating. Something finally like flipped in my brain where I accepted that I don't make music because I'm good at it. I make music because music is a form of communication that I value, and it's a form of self-expression that I think is vital. And it's been a practice with me to try to take more things seriously. Like, that unlocked liking other music too. Like, music that when I was like in college and I thought I had the best obscure music taste in the world, and I would hear a pop song and I would be like, this is garbage. I don't take this seriously. I don't take whatever this corny thing is seriously. I don't take this Bleeding Heart piano ballad seriously. And it's like, why? What? Like, if it's sincere, then I can take it seriously. Like, the only music I don't take seriously is music that seems insincere. You know, it's just like there's value in it outside. I don't know. It's just like, how much does anything matter? I know this is getting super like.
No, this is my kind of shit, by the way. I'm loving this.
Yeah, this is like, I had to be like, it doesn't actually matter what I say. Like, I will probably, my contribution to art, whether it's corny or whether it's lauded as genius or panned as garbage, is going to be like not even a footnote in human history. So I might as well just make the songs that I have fun playing or that feel important to me.
Well, like, yeah, so there's like 6 things you said that I thought were awesome. So I was watching the Go-Go's documentary the other night, which if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It rules. And
so good.
It's on the list.
And there was so much, real punk rock kind of missed me. Like I came to me later, but I always, and I always heard like, well, what was so great about punk rock is if you wanted to start a band, you just started a band, and it didn't matter if you were good, you just did it. And then I've got friends that like came up like in the sort of like second wave of punk, like started the emo thing, like this band Far, my friend Jonah, and like this kid, and then John Darnielle. Do you know the Mountain Goats? Like, so
do I know the Mountain Goats?
So John and I went to college together, and
he's on my site. He interviewed him a couple years ago. He's so cool.
He's very sweet because I ran an open mic, and he always says that the Mountain Goats wouldn't exist if it wasn't for me, because I was such a fanatical. He came one night at the end of my open mic, and he said, and we were the same year. He was older than me, but he was a new resources student. So we were in all the same classes, and he said, hey, can I play? And he'd come back from work, and I was like, yeah. And he played a song, and it made me cry. And I said, like, can you come back next week and play another song? And there was like 6 people in the room. And so every week he would write a song just to come back to play it for, and I would cry almost every time. And people would be laughing at some of the things, his turn of phrase or whatever. And it would move me like someone hit me in the fucking face. Right. Like, and that he's one of my favorite lyricists of all time in that way. And he would just shit these songs out. And so I would think to myself, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, that John comes every week with these fucking songs that are incredible, like Grendel's Mother, and like these songs that were just murdering me. And he would just kind of write them. And he had this unbelievable confidence. And he is a strangely confident character as well, like in his person. But here I was, this extroverted sort of like running a fucking open mic and like bringing people up. And here was this kid who seemingly would sit in class and be kind of quiet. And yet his confidence in his craft was so right on that he had no trouble writing these songs. No one ever could tell him what he was writing wasn't good, because it didn't matter. And that's what it's sort of like wearing clothes or anything like that. It's like self-expression. For some reason, self-expression to me, well, not for some reason, but self-expression for me has always been difficult. So because it doesn't mean that I've been someone else. It just means that I put these hurdles in place, millions of them, in order to just get to like what shirt I'm going to wear. Right. So like, this is how I've lived most of my life. And so the Go-Go's movie all of a sudden reminded me yet again that like, here were these women who were told by everybody that they hated their lives, and they were just like, fuck it, we just want to do this. And it was all about the intention, and it wasn't about the chord changes, and it wasn't about the whatever. It was like, I want to beat on this fucking thing, and I want to scream. And like they did. And so that was a nice moment of like reminder that none of it really matters, that we're all just going to push up fucking trees at some point. And so the idea being, and it's our only real currency that matters in life is our own kind of fucked up view of things. And the more that we include other people, and unless it's a true collaboration, the more that we think about how our fucked up view can be shifted to fit everybody else's idea of what they like, the further and further we get away from our fingerprint of like who we are. And so, anyway, that's like a ramble, but
well, no, I totally get you. Honestly, I've been toying with the idea of thinking of music. I mean, music as primarily a communication tool, but also music as discourse. Like basically what you're doing is throwing a data point from the currency that you have of your own perception of the world and your own inner world and your feelings. You are throwing that data point into an ongoing conversation. And if you don't try to represent it honestly, then it's like useless data.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But also the thing, you brought up John Darnielle, I think, I could talk forever about how good of a poet that dude is. But I listened to the podcast that he did with, I'm forgetting his name, but I only listened to the Mountain Goats, where he talks in depth through each one of the songs. And the sense I got from him, having never met him and like Twitter interacted sort of, the sense I get from him is that art gives him joy.
Yeah.
And like because the thing you were saying about like, it's not necessarily important, this chord change or like this perfect sound or this certain type of microphone. It is only it's only important insofar as it gives you joy. Like that's why. So I live with a bunch of members of a band, and it's a prog band. And we were having this conversation yesterday about virtuosos who are flying up and down the neck and like playing 7-string basses, which is like, why should a bass have more strings than a guitar? But that's my opinion. Anyway, so it's the idea of like, are you pursuing this out of a genuine desire to engage with whatever it is, the material, the music? And so it's like, I now have more thoughts about, I guess, calculated things like you're describing. Like I love to sit and close listen to records because I think, oh wow, that production choice really made that line stick out. Like that was such an excellent way that made the vehicle of this song better for delivering this emotion. And it's because whatever happens in here when I like lose my breath or when the hair on my neck stands up is something that I want to chase and I want to be able to create. And the more that I do that, I feel like the more layers of pretense I can pull off. Like the more I just sit with my instrument and the more I learn about how music works, how chords relate to each other, like how the circle of fifths work or how you set a compressor in Logic. Like those things are fascinating to me because it's like, honestly, I've been talking about music as communication, but it's like learning a new word. The more words I have in my vocabulary, the more accurately I can describe to you what I'm feeling and the closer I can be to becoming understood, which is what human beings crave. So it's like, of course, I want to devour all the objects or all the things at my disposal that will help me be more understood. And that's the sense I get from John when he talks about like things I didn't even realize, because his lyrics are so weird that they do seem like he's just shitting out random lyrics. But then he'll be talking about a song and be like, oh, well, there's like this certain rhyme scheme. And he's like a poetry nerd and talks all about like the meter. He was the first person I heard talking about like the way your mouth forms around words and fitting those together in a pleasing way, you know? And
it's funny what you're saying. There's two things. The idea of self-love is like in a true way, right? Music and performing music and writing music and creating music is at its essence, even if it's music that's comes from pain or it comes from a place of whatever, it's the highest form of self-love, like in that way.
Sure.
because you're essentially like trusting yourself and you're expressing yourself and you're fearlessly representing who you are. And whether no one hears it or everybody hears it, it's like, that's really what it comes down to, is like, if you have a real stem of self-love in there, I feel like it girds you and steels you so that you can do this thing. Right. Totally. And then you were talking about these two parts, about the analytical and the gut. Mm-hmm. And this, we can use John as an example, but we can use what you were saying about learning the circle of fifths and that kind of stuff. John is an analytical human being, like, like compulsively so, right? He's like incredibly analytical and thinks about all this stuff. But what I really loved about it was that his songs were not. And so it was like, maybe the information that got pushed into the machine of his brain was analyzed and overthought but when it came out, it was the opposite of that. And I think when his songs are the most successful for me in terms of their impact, they feel as if they never touched anything they just sort of like were birthed straight down, like a swoosh when you throw a basket and it goes right in. It doesn't bounce off of anything. It's like that to me that's riding the beautiful, magical thing for me, when listening to music and when writing it. And it's the thing that scares me most, is when I feel like I'm not touching the floor, I'm not touching the walls, I'm not touching the ceiling. I'm just kind of like floating fast through this experience. And for me, I choke it dead at about maybe a verse. You know what I mean? Like I might get a verse out and be like, when Tom Petty says, I wrote Free Fallin' in 10 minutes with Jeff Lynne, I sat down and I fucking strummed it. It's like that. For Tom Petty was essentially, and I don't know him, but everything I've read was like a fairly low functioning individual, like in terms of like the world that he lived in, like people did things for him and he did, it's like, but he had that on lock. And so to me, if I could get a whole song like Free Fallin' out, I'd walk off my house, because like, why would it'd be the apex of my life? It'd be like, I'm done. Sure. This is great. I just shit Free Fallin'. But like, but the idea is how it's like, and that's why I liken it to dance or sex or painting or any of that kind of stuff. If you can be in a groove and not be analytical, the process of getting you there can be analytical. But once you're in the shoot of the experience, if you just like, you have to let go and then you ride it. And the more confident you are in yourself, or the more used to that you are, I feel like the better you are at doing it. And then we get things like fucking Led Zeppelin at moments, or we get, or Joni Mitchell, you know what I mean? Like we get, like Joni Mitchell's such an analytical writer, but when she does the song, it feels effortless. Like she just sat down and like, and outpoured this song.
I think what you're talking about is, and I'm hesitant to use this word because I have hangups about it, but mastery. First of all, Tom Petty, again, always reminds me of my mom. She loves that song Running Down a Dream because it never would come to me. And I'm like, wow, that lyric has always sat with, I'm just like, like that just comes out, the story about him writing Free Fallin' in 10 minutes reminded me about this. It could be made up, but I like it as just a urban legend that, Leonard Cohen once asked Bob Dylan how long it took him to write Blowin' in the Wind. And Bob Dylan was like 5 minutes. And it infuriated Leonard Cohen.
Because it takes him 6 years, Yeah,
well, he wrote 75 possible verses for Hallelujah.
Yep.
And it's like, well, of course he did, because he loves music. And I listened to this podcast, sort of being the creative styles of, it's on revisionist history, that Malcolm
Dude, the Hallelujah episode is the greatest episode.
It is crazy. It is. I think about that episode like once a week. And I listened to it like 3 years ago because it talks about the two different sorts of, I think Malcolm calls it genius, but I don't like that word, because I think when you describe someone as having like innate genius, it devalues their commitment to the work. Like I've been thinking about this with my own stuff too, and I don't know, when people say that art just comes to a person and always operates at its truest, at its most sincere, from a point of like immediacy, without thought or without consideration. That might be true, but there is work. Like, there's so much work to get to the mastery that makes the immediacy possible.
Yep.
I'll put it like this. Like, I love playing piano just for fun, because it feels like I'm watching a watercolor painting get made in my brain. And that's, I don't know how else to describe it. It's beautiful. But the more that I practice the piano, the more options I have. So it's like, yeah, when I sit down and literally close my eyes, I'm not thinking about like, oh, this is like this augmented note and it's going to sound, I like don't know what I am playing, but I feel confident. It's like the more I learn, if I hit a sour note, my brain can think like, oh, that's okay, because you can just do this modal shift, or you can just have the confidence to kind of walk the chords around, and maybe it'll be weird, and then you'll get back to something beautiful, and you can work from an unconscious point because you have done so much
work.
Again, you've done so much. Well, yeah, and I mean, not work is weird because it's a capitalist idea, so I maybe practice.
Right. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's your practice. It's your meditation. It's the thing that you return to and involve yourself in. It's just like walking. Like, the whole reason why I can zone out when I run is because when I was a kid, I couldn't walk at all. And then I spent years and years and years walking. And then I wanted to get better at running, and I was not running successfully, and I was hurting my body. So I looked up things about how to be a better runner, how to stretch, how to control the way my foot falls on the earth. And
is that how sprained ankle? Wait, is that how that song?
No, when I wrote Sprained Ankle, I literally smoked a pack a day of Marlboro Red 100s and got out of breath walking up the stairs. I was in the worst shape. I was like 90 pounds and frail. I wrote that just as a metaphor, and it's so ironic that now I love running. But I started running to deal with anxiety and to quit smoking.
So what Julien was saying about, I have a theory, and forgive some of the terms that I use, because I might use work, and I understand.
I was just being,
but
I
get
don't
it.
actually take offense.
No, I don't mean it. Yeah. I just mean, I don't want to get in the way of my articulating it by using
go for it.
So to me, in the world, there are Joni Mitchells and Princes, right? Like, who live in, and Dylan, who kind of live in this world where whatever it is that they consume, they are effortless in their ability to then translate that into what they do, right? And so it works in this way. So I call them geniuses.
Sure.
Even though that, again, I get what you're saying, but it doesn't mean they don't do the work. It just means it's like watching someone play basketball who's really gifted, right? You watch the way they move. I could study basketball and study all the same things and do all the same training, and I wouldn't have any of that experience. I wouldn't have any of that grace, or because it would look like I'd look like somebody falling down the stairs or whatever. But like, so Prince and Joni Mitchell and Dylan live in this world to me where they are such, and it's a form of, work, not work, but like their process has allowed them to be, their muscles are so, but really they're just, and then in the other category, I put bands like, so U2, right? Mm-hmm. My favorite band up until a point of all time, because to me, they were so average. They were four very average people doing this thing where they were able to then get together and work on something, and they could recognize magic. Whereas, like, you could argue that Tom Petty, Joni Mitchell, Prince, they have trouble recognizing magic, like, because to them, they're just fucking everything that comes. Yeah, they're in it all the time. And U2. And another band that I loved as a kid that represents this to me as well. So if you look at a band like 1987 Guns N' Roses, right? Like,
right.
So like 1987, that was a genius operation, right? It was like sort of people that came together and made genius. You look at a band like Def Leppard, who weren't geniuses at all, but were capable of working so hard and recognizing what genius was coming in, that they could find songs that were moving, different kinds of songs, I get it. But to me, like, when you hear Photograph, or you hear Sweet Child of Mine, or you hear Case of You, or you hear When Doves Cry, to me, it's all the same. It's just songs that fucking blow my mind. But it's neat to see the different humans that make them. And and I feel like I've always really come down on the working class side of it, which is what I call it, kind of the blue collar, like the every, which is again terrible. But like because I am not a genius in that way. When I create, I feel very much like I'm just not graceful. The things that come through don't feel. And I was going to ask for you, as you learn more things, do you find yourself becoming? And I guess it's hard to give yourself credit. Like, it would be hard for you to be like, I think I'm fucking awesome. But like, do you feel like the more you do this kind of work, that you sort of feel there's you're breaking kind of I feel that your records really do feel like an extension of you in this way that is really exceptional. And it feels like when you play guitar and the way you play pedals and the way that you sing and the way you use your voice, it all feels very much like so the more as you learn, do you feel like you're kind of snapping the boundaries even further and finding yourself becoming more agile in that situation? Or do you feel like you're getting a lot of information? Like for me, I feel like I'm still clunky. The more I learn, I'm still real clunky about it. But do you feel like you're getting more agile the more you learn about it and that kind of stuff?
I get what you're saying about like option anxiety, or about like being too formal. Like, again, the people that I live with are all incredible virtuosos that are trained in music since high school, like went to an arts magnet school, majored in music. And I majored in something tangential to music that was marketable because that's what I thought my parents wanted. But, yeah, I find I have to be really careful not to, and I went through a phase where I did this, where I like flaunt my new knowledge immediately, but I think about, I think about this concept a lot about like a painter like Mondrian, right? It's like cubes. Anybody can just put some cubes on paper. To get to the point where you can arrange primary colors in a very simple and minimal way and have it be beautiful, you have to spend years being able to render things. Like, I'm sure Picasso could have made a semi-photorealistic oil painting of his subjects, but instead he made a lady's nose above her eye. And like, the reason why he played with form was because he had a deep understanding of what was going on in the like skill boat. And you know what, you said something about the working class musicians too, and I think that's real. I think there is something about, especially people who are self-taught to a degree, like, I don't know, I think that there is a more impulsive, like, the impetus for making music is different than if you were like raised in maybe a different economic situation where you were inundated with resources and learned how to do something because you just could and you wanted to be the best. Like, I think, I don't know, that's why I like telling stories about my like Appalachian family, like being just kind of, everybody's like kind of good at an instrument, like just as good as they need to be to like communicate. But yeah, I don't know. I guess sometimes the knowledge inhibits my ability to write, I guess, without all the bells and whistles, but also it's like, I love subtraction. I love putting every idea that comes into my brain and trying it a million different ways. That's how you figure out like where the square block goes when you're a kid too. You're just like, I don't know, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. Like, that's my whole, I don't know, that feels like my whole life is just being like, I'm going to try this now. It looks like it didn't work out. I'm going to try something different. Like,
Yeah. And not to, but now you got to go,
you're
but
good.
The idea is, it really is just it's the direct reflection of the human. And so if the human is the kind of person who is gonna, that's what makes being an artist such an amazing job, is that you have these, you can plot your course, or you can see how you've gone by the art that you've made. And you can see the moments when you were constricted, or the moments when you were free, or the moments when you were freer, or whatever. But the idea is, if you're the type of person who gets information and then is able to process that, and then is able to, like, you might have a couple moments where you're showing how much information you know and how much knowledge, and you're throwing it around, and you put weird time signatures in just to put them in. But then, like, by the next go round of your evolution, those things become sort of a part of your paintbrush and part of your canvas. And then all of a sudden it becomes a natural. It's all about getting natural with the experience. And the only way to do that, as we know, is to do it and to sort of fall face first into it. If you do it by yourself in your room, or you do it on a large scale, that's the only way.
Yeah, completely. I agree.
Yeah. Awesome.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. Don't forget, you can find all of my interviews with over 200 songwriters on my Songwriters on Process website at songwritersonprocess.com, going all the way back to 2010. You can read them, watch them, or listen to them. So until next time, thanks for listening.